Hey, you, the woman! Stop right there. That shout cut straight through the morning rush, echoing across Gate B42 at Miami International Airport. It was that insane time when announcements are blaring, and the crowd is a giant, noisy mess. But that single, sharp voice somehow managed to freeze the whole place up. The one who stopped was a lone woman, looked like she was from East Asia. She was rocking a black turtleneck under an olive-green blazer, her shoulder-length hair tied back in a messy knot, and her face was totally blank, her boarding pass clutched in her hand. A security officer rushed over, his face hard as stone. "Excuse me for a second? Could you show me your identification, please?" She didn't say a word, just quietly handed over her passport. But that silent, almost too smooth move just made the security guys even more suspicious. Doesn't she understand English? Hey! Are you hiding anything? Suddenly, two more security agents came up behind her, boxing her in. Nearby passengers started holding up their phones, and you could hear the click of camera shutters. Her eyes flicked toward them for just a split second, but she didn't say anything. She just kept staring straight ahead. Is this boarding pass even real? Open your bag, right now. The officer's voice was getting louder, angrier. It didn't matter if she spoke English, Spanish, or whatever, she was choosing to stay completely silent. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Get an interpreter. No, wait, there's no time. Take this woman into isolation. They grabbed her arm. She didn't fight back, not at all. They didn't even have to use force, she just went along with it, way too easily. Don't let this person board the flight. Take her name off the manifest just to be safe. Reports can wait. Just get her out of here. That's the kind of talk you could hear between the airport staff. No one bothered to check her emotional state, her destination, or anything about her. They changed course and led her to the security room behind the gate. It was a messy, white-walled box of a place. On the desk, there was an open laptop computer and a stack of carelessly piled-up papers. The smell of someone's half-eaten jelly donut hit my nose. One of the officers roughly pulled out a chair. Sit down. We're running a check on you now. Still, she just followed the order silently. She wasn't scared, but she wasn't being defiant either. If anything, that total lack of reaction was just making them even more frustrated. Why won't you say anything? What country are you from? China? Korea? Another officer dumped the contents of her bag all over the desk. There was her passport, some makeup, a handkerchief, and a sealed white envelope. He picked up the envelope and was about to tear it open when. Please do not touch that. For the very first time, she spoke. It wasn't fluent English or that robotic, rehearsed accent. It was Mandarin, but the small voice held absolutely no emotion. The officer frowned. What? You can talk, can't you? She didn't say anything more. She just slowly stood up and placed both hands on the back of the chair. The gesture was weirdly formal, almost theatrical. Who the heck is this woman? Just outside the bustling security room, she pulled out her phone. The screen displayed a notification, code blue 404. Silently, without letting anyone see, she dialed a single number. It was a number only she would know. A few seconds later, the call connected. This is Alexandria Thorne. In that exact moment, everything suddenly made sense. Alexandria Thorne. Born in New York in 1992. She was selected for the 404 Special Operations Team faster than almost anyone else who joined the Army Reserve. She was damn good at counterterrorism ops, hostage negotiation support, and intelligence analysis, and she'd been involved in countless highly classified missions. But her entire record had been wiped clean now. On paper, she was just a civilian, a retired reservist. Her name wasn't on any official document. Still, her past was quietly breathing life into the present. She sat silently in front of the heavy, metal door at the back of the security room. Her hands were folded on her lap, she didn't lift her head. The faint fluorescent light cast shadows on the ceiling tiles. I could hear the irregular hum of the air conditioning and a mix of disinfectant and the sweet smell of cologne. Could she be a retired high-ranking officer? No, it's not in the records. Her past entries into the country look clean, too. The officers whispered among themselves behind her. Alex pretended not to hear, but her eyes moved just a little. Inside her mind, the next decision was already being made. A memory flashed into her mind, a mission from 8 years ago. The nighttime airstrip at Dover Air Force Base. Alex was sitting in the communications truck with a headset on. Code Blue 404-inch, that was the ultra-classified line for the Special Ops team. When that code was broadcast, it meant action that even the government barely knew about. Thorne, status on comms is normal. I'm switching all instructions to a recorded line now. If you fail, you're erased. She could still hear the senior officer's muttered warning. It wasn't about the mission's success, it was the quiet pressure of being wiped out if she failed that had soaked deep into her bones. The cold wind that night, the freezing feel of the metal, and the silent disavowal papers she was handed after the mission was over, it was all blending into this quiet room she was in now. Alex put her smartphone back in her pocket and let out a tiny breath. She wasn't showing any signs of distress, but her fingertips were shaking just a little. Who the hell did you just call with that number? The officer who had come back into the room asked again. Alex slowly looked up. Private contact, she said, just those 2 words. There was a faint trace of ice deep in her tone. The officer hesitated for a second but quickly raised his voice. Look, until we figure out what's going on, you're not leaving this room. Understood. Her reply was shockingly quiet, but even that simple acknowledgement felt heavy. Then, Alex made one tiny move. She subtly tapped the icon for a military communications app hidden on the bottom of her bag. The login screen popped up. With a slight tremor in her finger, Alex started punching the numbers of her passcode into the field. Just then, she sensed something happening outside the room, a small commotion, the sound of running feet, chatter over the radio. It started, Alex thought. Her eyes briefly glanced up at the fluorescent light on the ceiling. Behind the door, it was the start of an emergency landing that no one knew about yet. We got a call that a single Asian woman was lurking around. She looked suspicious. What are we supposed to do? The air in the security room was already cold, like they were just going through the motions. The young officer sitting across from Alex's side, his eyes still fixed on the paperwork. Your name. Can you say it out loud for me again? Alex just silently pushed her passport across the desk. The letters read Thorne, Alexandria, but to his eyes, it must have looked like something else. Can't figure out how to pronounce this, man. Whatever. Fine. Just wait here. At the same time, another officer started roughly searching through her bag again. He tossed aside clothes, flipped through a small notebook, and threw out her glasses case. What's this? He grumbled, holding up a small emergency procedure memo written in Spanish. He scoffed, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it into the trash can. Something deep in Alex's chest sank at that moment, heavy and silent. But it didn't explode or burst out. Instead, her middle finger on her right hand, the one she used to pull a heavy trigger, trembled just a little. So, what's the deal? You really don't speak English? Alex didn't look up. She understood the words, but she decided she didn't need to answer. That was standard operating procedure for a mission, silence. That silence made the air even thicker. Are you serious? She's definitely weird, this lady. One of the officers tapped the desk lightly. The low thud echoed through the metal legs across the entire room. To Alex's ears, it sounded like it was coming from a mile away. Finally, they picked up her cell phone. These numbers, they're all from Canada. She must be part of some shady group or something. Stop, please. Alex spoke, her voice low but clear. The air instantly tightened. This is my personal property. Do not operate it without my permission. A moment of silence fell. The officers looked at each other, frustration coloring their faces. You were silent a minute ago, their expressions screamed. Well, then, why didn't you speak up in the first place? We don't want to do things this way either, you know. But there was no real discipline in his voice. They only saw her as an object to be dealt with. Alex slowly closed her eyes. She'd been in similar situations before, prejudice, assumptions, lack of understanding. But getting angry wouldn't change anything. The greatest resistance she could offer was simply not reacting. Just then, a small noise came from outside the room. Running footsteps in the hallway, radio static, and an anxious voice speaking English. Alex quietly lifted her head. The officer in front of her stared hard at her face and muttered, "How can you be so calm?" Alex didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag and gently pulled out a small, thick white envelope with a wax seal on the back. It was an emergency dispatch from the United States Department of Defense. She placed it on the table and spoke quietly. Give this to the supervisor above you. You are not qualified to make a judgment. It sounded less like a request and more like an order. The officer's eyebrows shot up. In that exact moment, the door to the room was forcefully pounded on. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need every piece of information on that woman now. Alex didn't move. She just narrowed her eyes slightly. The silence continued, but deep within it, a fire was definitely beginning to light up. When the FBI agents arrived, the security room fell still, like a battlefield. The atmosphere had completely shifted. It wasn't the feeling of pressure or coldness anymore. It was a complete reversal of the situation, the kind that happens when an unseen force finally steps into the room. The sharp, short command hung in the air. An agent in a dark suit flashed his credentials without a word, and the airport security guys instinctively backed away, giving her space. Alex didn't move. She looked like she'd been expecting the visit all along. A smartphone was placed in front of her. The screen was black now, but it still held the ghost of a transmission that had been made just minutes earlier. Going back a few minutes. Just before all hell broke loose, Alex had pulled out a special, black communication device from her bag. It was the classified line straight to the Department of Defense, the one they called the 404 line. No call logs, no global positioning system tracking, not even a transmission record was kept. The number she was calling only existed in her head. It wasn't saved in any phone book or on any cloud service. Her finger trembled for a second as she typed the number. Once, a long time ago, she had pressed the wrong digit and the call had failed. She remembered the quiet reprimand, a mission doesn't require perfection. It requires the courage to choose. That voice still echoed in her mind. Alex took a deep breath and paused, then typed again, precisely, silently, and without hesitation. A brief, silent connection tone sounded immediately. This is Alexandria Thorne. 404 emergency code. Operation name is Crossgate. I require a witness. A man's low voice returned through the device's speaker. Code confirmed. We move within 5 minutes, local time. The target will be eliminated. You only need to observe. Is that correct? Alex gave a short reply. Yes. I will simply remain here. That was it. No further explanation, no more orders, and no emotion needed. Back to the present. The FBI agent now stood in front of her. He took one step, then another, but kept his distance. He looked directly into her eyes and spoke calmly. Who are you? Alex just tilted her head slightly. The gesture wasn't defiance or refusal, it was just space. Do you know what happened on the flight you were supposed to be on? Alex didn't answer, but that silence was the same as saying, yes, I know. Outside the room, preparations for an emergency news conference were starting. Emergency landing, passenger isolation, safety checks, and an unknown warning call as the cause. The truth, that all of this started with one woman's silence, was known only to the people on the ground. Why did you make the call? Alex didn't answer that question either. She simply rested her fingers gently on the small envelope in her pocket and quietly closed her eyes. I'm just finishing what started back then. It was a mission that would never be documented, an action that would never be credited. Her silence wasn't resistance, it was protection. The air in the room grew heavy. In that thick silence, Alex spoke one last time. For the first time, it was the same exact words she'd used on the call, but this time, it was impossible to tell who she was speaking to. The silence echoed. And in that silence, the world began to slowly shift. It happened suddenly. Global Airlines Flight GA317, heading from Miami to Chicago, was about 37 minutes after takeoff when a notification flashed in the cockpit, an urgent request from air security, reason unknown. The captain frowned repeatedly as he stared at the monitor. An unprecedented order for an immediate landing was displayed, but without any details. The co-pilot reconnected the radio. Confirming emergency reason. Why the immediate landing? Potential target present on board. Immediate landing. Federal Bureau of Investigation and United States military cooperation is in effect. The temperature in the cockpit dropped instantly. Without notifying the passengers, the aircraft began a sharp turn. Outside the window, the dry landscape of Arizona tilted, and the sun slanted through the glass. People in their seats looked at each other with concern. What's wrong? Why are we turning back? Could it be a mechanical failure? It was confusion, not fear, yet. But the moment the emergency lights came on, the atmosphere changed completely. We are entering an emergency landing procedure. Please remain seated until further instruction. The voice on the intercom was calm but stiff. That stiffness immediately made the passengers alert. At the same time, in the special holding room at Miami International Airport, Alex was quietly sitting with her eyes closed. She couldn't hear anything, but the distant vibrations reached her, the sound of metal, the crackle of a radio, and the subtle change in the rhythm of people's footsteps. Senior Special Agent Miller of the FBI walked into the room. His eyes were completely different from before. Your call set this in motion. Flight GA317 is making an emergency landing near Las Vegas right now. Alex didn't look up, only casting a glance down at the communication device in her bag. Miller continued, the passengers on the plane have been isolated. The FBI and local authorities are boarding now. But there's a problem. He paused, then spoke in a low voice. No one knows who you are. Your name is nowhere in our database. Alex opened her eyes slowly. Her dark gaze was unwavering. I'm just a retired reservist. I am a civilian now. Retired U.S. military, records purged, then? Why did you use code 404? The air stopped for a second. The FBI agent's eyes dropped to Alex's hands. Her fingers were still gripping the edge of her bag. They began to tremble slightly again, but she took a breath to suppress it. The real danger isn't over yet. Her words sounded like a prophecy. On the airport tarmac, lines of FBI vehicles, military armored trucks, and air security teams were gathering. Flight GA317 appeared on the runway. As the aircraft's body shook slightly and the wheels scraped the ground, the faces of the ground staff tightened. Was it a suspect? An explosive? No one knew. But the fact that her call had stopped this plane was spreading a unique kind of silence and tension across the scene. In the security room, Miller looked at Alex's expression and asked, almost whispering, why didn't you get on the plane? Alex finally moved her lips slightly. If I had been on board, I might not have been able to stop it. Miller was speechless. It would take him a few more minutes to realize that her silence, her judgment, and even her posture had all been part of an action planned from the very beginning. Just then, the radio crackled violently. Suspicious item isolated on board. Connect directly to FBI headquarters. Alex's eyes narrowed just a bit. He's still there. Silently, she closed her eyes again. The storm was just about to take shape. She wasn't just some woman. In a corner of the security office, Federal Bureau of Investigation agent Miller stared at a single sheet of paper on the desk, his face a knot of frustration. It was a copy of the printed passport, the scheduled flight, and a response from the U.S. side that simply read, "Records purged." The only verifiable history was her entry and exit as a civilian, and there wasn't even a government referral letter. This is all wrong. Is she a double agent? A spy? The other agents around the room started murmuring, but Alex didn't react to any of their stares. She held a cup of warm water with both hands and slowly took a sip. The steam gently touched her eyelashes. There was a strange core of calm in her stillness. That report we just got, Miller slammed his hand on the desk. The tip-off that went to FBI headquarters, it came through code 404, not the normal channels. Plus, it had an immediate priority command attached. This woman is unheard of. Who the hell are we interrogating? The door opened. The newcomer was an Air Force liaison officer. His name tag read Jake Bradley. He stopped dead the moment he saw Alex, narrowing his eyes as if recalling something. No way. Is that Alexandria Thorne? Alex didn't lift her head, but she quietly set down the cup. That name is no longer in use. Bradley took a sharp breath. The one from Operation Blue Crest? Even that is just history now. As she said it, Alex closed her eyes. The familiar smell of gunpowder and the sea air rushed back to her, a cold night, radio static, and a single gunshot. In that mission, where she herself pulled the trigger, she had lost her entire unit. She had erased her own name, Alexandria Thorne, as a way to accept that responsibility. Bradley put a hand on Miller's shoulder and whispered, "If that's her, she shouldn't be here. This airport is her turf. If she moved, something is definitely happening." Something was happening. On the now-landed flight GA317, there was a suspicious individual among the passengers, a man posing as an American diplomat. He had forged identification and a fake passport. And he was on her scheduled flight. Silence. Everyone looked at Alex. She took a single, deep breath and finally spoke. "I was supposed to be on that flight. But being removed at that exact moment was, frankly, more convenient." Miller was shocked. She planned on being taken off the plane? Alex didn't answer, but her silence held a heavier certainty than any confirmation. She pretended not to understand us. She didn't react. "And we totally blew the call," one of the officers muttered bitterly. "We thought she was just some random Asian woman. We were dead wrong." Alex narrowed her eyes. Being just some woman can sometimes be the most effective weapon. At that moment, Miller's radio squawked. "On-board isolation complete. One suspect restrained. Explosives residue confirmed. Currently being questioned." Silence again. No one could move. Alex reached for the warm cup again. The slight tremor in her fingers was completely gone now. She quietly took a sip. The gesture was like a moment of peace after a battle. Then she said, "That's why I didn't get on the plane." It was the answer to everything. The price of silence. A reply regarding her military record finally came from the U.S. side. Miller gripped the fax printout and handed it to Bradley. In faint gray ink, the paper read, "No information available." Below that, it continued, "All military records regarding Alexandria Thorne have been deleted. No current holdings exist." Deleted? Bradley whispered, low. That's the same as admitting she did exist. Just then, Alex looked up. The overhead lights flickered slightly, casting a faint shadow over her eyes. "My military status was erased by order. It was the price for a mission." Tension sparked between Miller and Bradley. Alex didn't hesitate to continue. Her voice carried the full weight of responsibility and the refusal to seek forgiveness. 7 years ago, a military encroachment incident occurred near a hostile nation's territory, a plot by a terrorist cell disguised as civilians to capture a state official. The 404 Special Operations Team was mobilized to stop it. At the time, I was the command support for that operation. Intelligence analysis, deployment orders, negotiation passcode management, it was all my responsibility. But I failed. Due to my misjudgment, one of my teammates didn't come back. As she said this, Alex pulled out a folded piece of paper from her bag. It was a letter, still crisp, sent from the family of Sergeant Major Trent. Dear Alex, I know no one else blames you. But I worry that you will never forgive yourself, and that is the hardest part. Alex had read that single sentence hundreds of times. The military required me to take responsibility in a way that wouldn't make the news. That method was the erasure. It meant becoming someone who, if no one knew about them, no one could blame them. In exchange, they wouldn't be allowed to exist either. Miller opened his mouth but couldn't find the words. Why would you agree to that? Alex didn't smile. She just answered quietly. Because I chose that mission. If I willingly directed people, gave orders, and made decisions, then I believed I had to accept the outcome myself. There were no tears or anger in her voice. Just quiet, absolute certainty. The air stopped. In the silence, Bradley slowly asked, but even with all that, you acted this time. Why? Alex's eyes shifted to the envelope on the desk. I didn't want the same thing to happen again. If that diplomat had been killed, it would have created a scenario where someone noticed something but did nothing. That would make me exactly the same as I was back then. For the first time, Alex looked down at her own hands. There were several faint scars on her fingertips, like old wounds. The feel of the worn training pistol she gripped, the sensation of snatching the radio from a fallen comrade, all of it was still etched into her skin. Miller spoke. Your actions saved the diplomat on the flight. Your tip was correct. But why won't you give your name? Why won't you defend yourself? Alex slowly narrowed her eyes at the question and replied, silence is sometimes the greatest testimony. That was the form of atonement, not revenge, that she had chosen. The resonance of her words filled the room. Outside, news helicopters were starting to circle above the tarmac. But no one yet knew the truth of what had happened. Is she a terrorist accomplice? A spy? She's clearly suspicious. She's too calm, which makes her even more suspect. And she's Asian, of course. It all started with a single photo that went viral. A shot of Alex, standing motionless and expressionless at the boarding gate, surrounded by security. Someone took the picture on their phone and posted it without permission. Suspicious person seen at the airport, naturally reported. Japanese woman. The tweet spread hundreds of thousands of times in just a few hours. The woman, whose identity was unknown, quickly became a target of outrage on the internet. News alerts flashed on the security room monitor. Flight 317 makes emergency landing in Las Vegas. Suspect isolated. Multiple eyewitness accounts of an Asian woman on social media. The reporter's voice was flat, simply reading out the information mechanically, as if the human element was irrelevant. Alex watched the report without a word, still and quiet. Notifications were pouring onto the smartphone placed in front of her, calls from unknown numbers, anonymous messages. We're watching you. Reveal your true identity, you liar. Her finger almost touched the screen once, but Alex gently flipped the phone over. She had always believed that choosing silence could sometimes be a responsibility, not an escape. But now, that belief was being tested. Your face is all over the internet. You can't hide now, Miller said, his expression strained. Beside him, Bradley was laying out printouts of the social networking service posts. People have the nerve to say whatever they want without any proof. Alex looked at them and slightly tilted her head. People are afraid of what they don't understand. And to fill that fear, they must make someone the villain. This time, I was the convenient enemy. Miller lowered his voice. Doesn't that hurt? Silence fell. Alex didn't speak for a while. Outside the window, the evening light reflected off the glass, blurring her outline. It does hurt. But I am not angry. Are you sure? Bradley asked. Alex didn't smile. She just looked down and answered, if I were angry, I'd want to destroy something. But I choose to protect, not to destroy, anymore. The atmosphere in the room changed slightly at her words. Both Miller and Bradley were silent, as if at a loss for words. Alex stood up and picked up her bag again. Her movement was gentle yet strangely confident. Where are you going? Miller asked. Alex turned back at the door. There is one more person I need to confirm. Who? The person who caused me to choose silence in the first place. A beat of silence. Then, Alex walked out of the room without another word. Her back silently screamed, I am not running away. Only the sound of her phone's notifications remained. The final target. Was it really her? Agent Valentino, an assistant from the United States Department of Defense, stared blankly at a report in the American Embassy Annex. The document contained a single, concise sentence in both Spanish and English. Alexandria Thorne, scheduled to be on flight GA317, is engaged in an official defense mission operation. The document submitted by the embassy changed everything. A mission? Then why was she silent from the start? Bradley muttered. Miller sighed deeply. Maybe the silence itself was the mission. Meanwhile, Alex was in a musty operations room in a corner of the airport. The walls were covered with old radios and dusty maps, a place where time seemed to have stopped. On the table was a single photograph, Ethan, the diplomat, Davies. On a small paper pasted to the back, it read, verify individual posing as the diplomat on board the aircraft. Use any means necessary, but make it appear as a third-party tip-off. Alex read the mission directive again, and a silent pain spread through her chest. I accepted from the start that no one would believe me. That was the price of silence. Just a few days earlier, in the underground command center of the Department of Defense, her former commanding officer had told her, I only ask one thing of you, to see the truth. But you must not act. You must not use your name. Your existence cannot be part of the overall mission structure. Do you understand? In an FBI interrogation room, the fake diplomat finally talked. I was scheduled to meet a Canadian ambassador on that flight. I was going to hand something over. But right before that, I got word that the woman was getting on board. The woman. Black hair, no expression, quiet. If she makes a move, we're screwed, that's what the higher-ups said. Agent Miller held his breath at the testimony. So, the fact that Alex was getting on board actually triggered the danger? That's right. If she boarded, the plan might fail. So they tried to take her out. But she didn't do a thing. She just stood there, silently. Yes, she did nothing. She destroyed a plot just by existing. Miller, upon hearing the report, muttered low, did she really do nothing? Bradley answered, no. She used the weapon of silence perfectly. Just then, Alex quietly entered the room. She wasn't in uniform or a suit, just a simple shirt and slacks, but she was clearly more than just some woman. Miller looked at her. We know the reason for your silence now. But why are you still refusing to speak? Alex looked down for a moment. Talking is no longer part of the mission. Then what now? Alex hesitated for a second, then answered. From now on, I'll speak with my own voice. My own words, not anyone else's orders. In that instant, her voice changed. It was quiet, but it clearly held Alex's own will. The silence still lingered around her, but it was no longer a mission requirement. It was starting to fade into a simple habit. Aftermath, the price of fame. The main terminal of Miami International Airport was as busy as ever. But one figure quietly stood out. Alexandria Thorne, the woman who had been at the center of all the chaos, was sitting on a bench as if nothing had happened. Her hands rested on her carry-on case, and she stared out the window. A jet slowly taxied down the runway, its white body gleaming in the morning sun. The reflection gently touched Alex's cheek. But the atmosphere around her was different. "Isn't that the woman? I saw her on the news." Something must have happened. People's gazes were quiet but piercing. Eyes of passing travelers unapologetically traced over her body, her hands, her carry-on. Some passengers stopped, half-raised their phones, but her presence was creating a soundless roar. Just then, an airport security guard slowly approached her. He was an older man, one of the staff who had interrogated Alex during the initial confusion. He held his cap in his hands, searching for the words. I'm sorry about yesterday." Alex didn't turn her head, but she gripped the handle of her carry-on case tighter. "We let our prejudices get the better of us. We didn't look for the truth, we just assumed we knew it. I wanted to apologize to you." The air around them shifted again at his words. The eyes of people who pretended not to hear slowly began to move. The guard's small apology started to shake the silence of the crowd. Alex quietly stood up. "Your words are enough." Her voice was calm and held no blame. If anything, it sounded like she was putting an end to something. "I am not angry at you. Misunderstandings happen to anyone. But the courage to admit that isn't easy." In that moment, the guard's eyes wavered. With a slight tear in his eye, he bowed deeply. "Thank you. Truly." Alex slowly walked away, her back straight. The burden of the mission's silence was gone from her stride. There was only the quiet resolve to stand on her own words. On a television in a corner cafe, a news anchor was speaking. The emergency landing incident was prevented by a silent tip-off from an American woman, leading to the capture of an individual posing as a diplomat. Authorities have not released details on the woman, but sources suggest she may have been involved in previous special operations. Alex didn't try to watch the news. She simply inhaled the scent of the herbal tea poured into her cup, feeling its warmth with both hands. It was a quiet, definite return to normal. It might be temporary, but it was a clear dividing line for Alex. The cashier quietly handed her the cup and said, "I saw you on TV." "Thank you." Alex's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly smiled in return. She didn't say anything, just nodded. That smile was the first sign that the real Alex was beginning to return. The call. Then, her phone rang. The screen displayed a familiar number. Director Jensen. The smile vanished from Alex's face. Her hands started to tremble again. It wasn't over. The remnants of the past and the final mission were pulling her back. The name that flashed on the screen was Jensen, Nicholas. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Her gripping fingers became clammy, and a heat completely different from the cup's warmth spread across her skin. The cafe's air conditioning hummed at a low frequency, but all Alex could hear was her own breathing, echoing in the distance. Director Jensen was one of the founding executives of the 404 Special Operations Team, a man known for his calm, cold, and ruthless judgment in commanding countless missions, a man they called the Ghost. It was Jensen who had quietly nodded when Alex decided to give up everything after that mission, saying, "Your name will vanish from this world." The phone kept ringing. Alex took a slow, deep breath and slid her finger across the screen. Alexandria Thorne. A few seconds of silence. Then, a calm, low voice returned. "It's been a while. I felt time stop for a second when I heard you were back." Alex didn't reply. "The Crossgate situation is resolved. Without your tip, diplomatic relations would have collapsed. We've received a thank you from the Canadian Embassy. I did not act with that goal in mind." "I know. You never choose the easy answer. You only choose the option you believe you're the only one who can carry the burden of." Jensen's voice hadn't changed, it was calm and cold, as if he spoke with human emotion placed one step behind. One thought surfaced in Alex's mind: you were always just a user of people. But it didn't become words. "I want to officially offer you reinstatement." Silence. Alex's breathing hitched slightly. Jensen continued, your purged record isn't fully complete yet. With some political maneuvering, we can make it look like you were never deleted at all. The code 404 witness records can be adjusted under the table. Alex looked down. The memories that had been sinking in her chest began to stir like muddy water. The burning platform, the comrades shout over the radio, that was your order. I will not return. Her voice wasn't shaking, but the weight of her words reached even Jensen. I see. That was all he said. Jensen didn't try to persuade her or deny her decision, which only tightened the knot in Alex's chest. I want to ask you one thing, Alex said. Did you order me to be removed from the flight? There was a pause of a few seconds, and then the answer came from the other end of the line, yes. You couldn't be on that plane. If you acted, the meaning of the mission would have changed. I needed you to be a powerless observer, to remain silent. Alex closed her eyes. Being just an observer is the hardest mission. I could only trust you with it. And you completed it perfectly. The conversation was almost over. But as a final, rare gesture, Director Jensen added, the family of Sergeant Major Trent wants to meet you. Not to forgive you, but just to talk to you. Alex's shoulder trembled slightly. She didn't say it out loud, just whispered it in her heart, I haven't even forgiven myself yet. The call ended. Alex stood still for a long moment. Outside the window, the sun was sinking, and the sky was beginning to glow orange. In the light of the sunset, Alex quietly murmured, well, I guess it's my turn now. The mission of silence was over. The mission of speaking was about to begin. The weight of those words still pressed down on her shoulders. In the Federal Bureau of Investigation headquarters interrogation room, the fake diplomat finally confirmed his story. I was supposed to be on that flight to meet with a Canadian diplomat. To hand something over. But right before, I was told a woman would be boarding. The woman. Black hair, no expression, quiet. The brass said, if she makes a move, we're in trouble. Agent Miller held his breath. So, the threat was actually triggered by the news that Alex would be on the flight. Exactly. If she boarded, the plan might fail. So they tried to get her removed. But she didn't do a thing. She just stood there, silently. She truly did nothing. She ruined an entire plot just by existing. Miller, hearing the report, whispered, did she really do nothing? Bradley responded, no. She used silence as a weapon, and she mastered it. Just then, Alex quietly appeared in the room. She wore a simple shirt and slacks, not a uniform or a suit, but her presence was more than that of just a civilian. Miller looked at her. We know why you were silent. But why are you still not speaking? Alex looked down slightly. Speaking is no longer part of the mission. Then what happens now? Alex hesitated for a moment and then answered, from now on, I will speak with my own voice. My own words, not anyone else's orders. In that moment, her voice changed. It was quiet, but it clearly held Alex's own will. The silence still lingered, but it was no longer a mission requirement. It was starting to transform into a simple habit. The air carried the smell of salt from the coast of Maine. Alexandria Thorne was walking down a narrow road deep in a quiet residential area, approaching an old clapboard house. She stopped at the gate. A small sign read, Trent. By the entrance, a planter of hydrangeas swayed gently in the winter light. Alex looked at the paper bag she was holding and took a deep breath. Her heart hammered when she pushed the doorbell. A woman in her late 50s opened the door. She looked at Alex and gave a small nod. Miss Thorne, right? Please, come in. Alex almost froze in place. It wasn't fear or tension. It was the relief of knowing there was no escape now. She took off her shoes and was led into a living room with wooden floors. On the wall, a smiling photo of Sergeant Major Trent was illuminated by a soft light. Let me get you some tea. Something warm, yes? Alex shook her head. No, I can get it. Nonsense. You're a guest. That single word, guest, hit Alex hard. She, who felt she had no right to be there, was being welcomed as an honored guest. That fact was heavier than anything else. A warm mug was handed to her. The moment she took it, her fingers trembled. The woman began to speak. I've always wanted to meet you. But not to hate you. My husband and son weren't career military. So, honestly, I never really understood what happened. Alex slowly looked up. Sergeant Trent acted on my order. And my misjudgment meant he didn't come back. The words choked in her throat, a sharp pain. The woman nodded quietly. I see. But after he passed, something was delivered here. She reached into a closet and pulled out a small, old envelope. Inside was Sergeant Trent's last letter, wrapped in faded paper. It was addressed to you, Miss Thorne, but the Department of Defense told us not to give it to anyone at the time. But I think I can give it to you now. With trembling hands, Alex took the letter. She broke the seal, and inside was a single, handwritten page. Dear Alex. If you're reading this, I'm guessing something went wrong, right? But that doesn't matter. You kept giving commands and looking forward until the end. I was honored to die following your order. Don't blame yourself. You're probably making that expressionless face again, aren't you? Alex's finger stopped on the last line. Her chest felt like it was breaking. She couldn't look away from the words burned into her memory. He was a strong person. I've been running for so long. But with this letter, I think I can face tomorrow. The woman smiled gently. Then I'm glad you came today. Alex nodded repeatedly, but no tears fell. She felt that if she cried, it would be the end of something. She needed to hold on to what little resolve she had left and finally move forward. On the road back, walking along the coast, a salty wind gently hit Alex's back. The sky was high and clear, and the winter sun made the water sparkle. Her shadow stretched long, but she didn't look back anymore. Just then, her phone vibrated. A message appeared, request for next operation received. She stopped. The letter was in her pocket. The weight of the past and the choice for the future crossed in her hand. In a briefing room on the secure Level A floor of the Department of Defense headquarters in Washington, D.C., Alexandria Thorne was back in the space after a long absence. Gray walls, silent air conditioning, classified documents spread across the desk. The familiar sight felt oddly distant. Director Jensen was seated at the far end. Among the classified operation files was one with a distinct red mark, Special Action Task Force Operation, Cloudburst. Jensen glanced at Alex. Is it silence again for me? Jensen shook his head. No. Not this time. This mission requires you to act. Silence. The word pricked her chest. Up until now, I have always moved you as someone who follows orders. But this mission, I want you to choose based on your own judgment. The decision to take it or not is yours. Jensen explained that the target was a highly classified sleeper agent operating within the United States, a group aiming to leak information, hidden within civilian facilities. The goal was to dismantle and secure the group, but their leader was an old comrade from Alex's training unit, Sergeant Ethan Vance. Alex's gaze stopped the moment she saw the name. Ethan Vance. A former comrade who went AWOL and was missing. The one person who had shown her a little bit of humanity amidst the silence and discipline. Why me? Jensen chose his words carefully. You are the only one who can reach him. Because he's a man who will only talk to someone who has also believed in silence. 2 heartbeats ran through Alex's chest, one for the memory of the past, and one for the question of who she was moving as now. If I go and fail, then what? A follow-up team will intervene. However, this is the first and last time a direct contact will be made. Alex picked up the operation file from the desk. Inside were Vance's current details, activity logs, and a danger assessment. A small doubt crept into her mind as she tried to read it calmly. But then she remembered Sergeant Trent's letter in her bag. I was honored to die following your order. You're probably making that expressionless face again, aren't you? Alex chuckled softly. It was a faint softening of her face, not quite a smile, but it was an expression the old her never had. It's a choice, not an order, then. That's right. This mission can only be done by someone who carries the weight of their past. I'll trust you with it on the condition that you stand on your own 2 feet. Alex slowly stood up. I'll do it. But it's not to be forgiven. It's to reclaim myself. Jensen gave a small nod. That's good. It means you've finally started telling your own story. Alex stood tall, her eyes reflecting a strong will. It was the face of a survivor, one she hadn't shown even the day the military purged her records. That night, Alex was back at the airport. This time, no one was chasing her or surrounding her. She stood alone, quietly looking toward her destination. A boarding announcement echoed. Listening to the voice, Alex slowly began to walk. Her footsteps made a sound again. This time, not by anyone's order, but by her own will. Denver, Colorado. In the early morning mist clinging to the mountainside, a small cemetery lay on the slope. The wind rustled dry leaves. That sound alone provided a quiet rhythm to the stillness. Alexandria Thorne stood quietly in one corner. She didn't press her hands together in prayer, she just stood. The headstone carved with Sergeant Major Trent's name had white flowers and the faint scent of incense carried on the wind. Alex slowly took the letter from her pocket, the final letter she had read countless times. She gently placed it in a small wooden box and set it next to the grave. I'm late coming here. Her voice was so quiet it dissolved into the wind. The truth is, I was afraid to come here all this time. She looked down slightly. The smell of the earth, the coldness of the damp stone, and the unspoken feelings in her throat swirled together. I never thought I could be forgiven. But perhaps it was I who decided that all along. She crouched down, and the wind gently swayed her hair. Sergeant Trent, were you laughing? There was no answer to her question. But Alex continued to speak. I still don't know how not to hurt people. In my missions and responsibilities, I always put my own feelings last. But, can I be a little kinder to myself now? The moment she spoke the words, a single tear silently slid down her cheek. She had tried not to cry. She had lived without making a sound. But here, finally, the unspoken feelings spilled out. I'm sorry. I could never say it. She whispered it to the unmoving stone. On the way back, Alex sat on the edge of a forest road. Light filtered through the pine trees, dappling the ground. She pulled out a folded chocolate bar from her pocket. She suddenly remembered the sweetness that the team members used to share between missions. She took a bite, and the simple, rich flavor filled her mouth. Someone always silently offered it back then. Fragments of memories surfaced gently, small laughs, the quiet of pre-dawn, instant coffee drunk under a cold sky. None of it was coming back, but all of it made her who she was now. Alex looked up at the sky. A clear blue stretched out, vast and silent. Forgiving, I guess, isn't about forgetting. It's about being able to walk with it anyway. No one answered her thought, but the wind gently stroked her cheek, as if someone were there. On the train ride home, watching the fields and low mountain ridges outside the window, Alex leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. A new notification had arrived on her smartphone, Operation Cloudburst, preparation complete. Requesting final decision on action confirmation. Alex slowly closed the screen. It was no longer an order. It was a notification that she had to choose. And Alex's expression became quietly resolute. In the next chapter of her life, she would stand on the front lines again. But this time, it wouldn't be a mission of silence. It was a time for a new choice, moving by her own will. In the morning bustle of New York City's financial district, amidst the flow of people climbing the subway stairs, a woman walked with a uniquely quiet presence, Alexandria Thorne. The traces of the former soldier were gone. Her hair was neatly trimmed, she wore a beige trench coat, and carried only a small leather briefcase. Yet, people turned their heads as she passed. They felt something. This woman was not just a commuter. There was an aura that suggested she had experienced something, overcome something, and was here now. She attended a small briefing in a high-rise office, a government program seeking outside subject matter advisors. The interviewer asked about her past employment. Alex offered a soft smile. Most of my employment history isn't on the record. But I'm quite accustomed to listening, observing, and silence. The interviewer tilted his head and chuckled a little. I see. You sound like you'd be a great asset. Alex didn't say anything, just bowed deeply. It wasn't about to prove anything. It was a gesture simply to acknowledge her presence. During her lunch break, Alex sat on a park bench and pulled a sandwich from her bag. The savory scent of the meat and the crispness of the lettuce filled her nose. Suddenly, a small girl sat on the bench next to her. Her mother had gone to the restroom, and the girl was swinging her legs. The girl looked at Alex's face and piped up, "You look really strong, ma'am." Alex was slightly surprised, then gave a gentle smile. I do? Yeah. You're not smiling, but you're not scary either. The girl's words brought a small warmth to the bottom of Alex's heart. Thank you. You really saw me. The girl smiled shyly. Mom says people who smile all the time aren't the only good people. Alex looked up at the sky. A clear blue stretched over them. The wind gently rustled the flowers in the garden. Several unread messages were on her smartphone. One was from her former commander, Director Jensen, "Cloudburst mission complete. Target convinced and secured. Your presence was the deterrent. No report needed. I'm quietly keeping your name off the record again." And another was a short text from Sergeant Trent's mother, "I still remember your small smile on the way home that day." Thank you. Alex gently closed the messages. She didn't reply or send a thank you. She just slipped the phone into her pocket and stood up from the bench. She no longer needed honor or status. She didn't need to blame anyone or be forgiven by anyone. She had protected what needed protecting in silence. And after that, she had quietly faced herself again. Her back, now that it was all over, was surprisingly light. No one was stopping her. No one was looking down on her. No one was praising her. But no one was blaming her either. The afternoon sun cast a shadow at Alex's feet. That shadow pointed straight ahead. And on the other side of the road, the future, which she had never once looked back toward, was quietly waiting for her.